Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by La Marzocco. They have been making espresso machines by hand in Florence since 1927. They are known for their innovation, beauty, and dependability in espresso equipment, and they have been the heart of some of the world's best coffee bars for that very reason all this time. Machines like the KB90 with the straight-in locking portafilters for ergonomics. We've got the PB, the Linea PB, which is one of my personal favorites, and that is just the classic Linea profile with all of the technology that allows the barista to control the espresso to the nth degree. Machines that they produce are ranging in style and function between manual and automation. In other words, they have a machine that's going to fit your style in your cafe. Reach out to them today, info@lamarzocousa.com, and also check out the website, lamarzocousa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rattleware, who is kind of the backbone of the cafe. When I say this, I mean, you don't really think often about smallwares until you don't have them. You know why? Because they're small. While at the same time, they're relied upon for the daily function of the coffee bar. And Rattleware has been supplying smallwares to the industry for quite a long time. Go to rattleware.com and look to see what they have. They have smallwares that just work. Shot pitchers, whisks, knock boxes, and everything in between. They want to be in the background of your cafe, letting it work the way that it should work. So again, we all rely on smallwares in the cafe, and I think one of the great companies that you could rely on for your smallwares is Rattleware. Okay, everyone. Well, today we are going to be talking about evil bosses and lazy baristas. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I find that there is constantly, and it's a story as old as time. The boss is evil, and the baristas or the staff are lazy, or we can't get them to do what we want. And what we end up doing is we create different cultures within the cafe that all look out for the best interest of that particular culture. That's kind of the nature of the thing. But I wanted to address this in a shift break because if we want to advance in the industry, if we want to create a better path forward for professionalism, for higher compensation for baristas, for profitable cafes, and we want just a healthy environment where people are caring for people all across the board, kind of that mutual care that we talk about a lot, then we can't be nursing these secret and sometimes not so secret grudges against people that often are not based on as much truth as we imagine they are. All of us have somewhat of an entitled attitude toward other people, and I'm one of them. And I think that you might be one of them too, even though you might be incensed at somebody else's entitlement, where you think the boss thinks they can demand more than is expected of me, and they're going to exploit me. And the boss thinks the same thing about the staff that don't follow through on the responsibilities that they already do have, and that they're being exploited, and that these baristas are entitled. They want a raise, but they're not even really doing their job as well as they could be doing their job. And we're all kind of talking about each other behind our backs because we don't know how to talk to each other about the work and about expectations. And this is the biggest problem, I think, in coffee. We know how to adapt to situations, and often we will adapt to situations to our own peril. Instead of finding clarity, we make assumptions, and then we base our entire inner world, the definition of who somebody is, based on what we've heard about them, based on what we assume about them. And then when their actions match up with all of the information from other people and the things that we assume, we have this confirmation bias that reinforces the assumption. And we are like, yeah, see, they're incompetent. You see, they're exploitative. You see they're lazy or they're evil. And we put these on people, I think, because we trust in our own desires that we want to do a good job. We don't want to be taken advantage of. And victimhood in the workplace is today, I think, a lot easier to fall into than personal responsibility. And when I say victimhood, hear me that I'm not talking about one group in particular, because you can imagine each group that has formed here, like some kind of coffee shop West Side story, we feel like we're being taken advantage of. Okay, so you're a leader and your staff are taking advantage of you, or vice versa. Then, oh, poor me. And there's a commiseration that happens in the group that just basically fuels you. You know, you can be fueled by hatred, you can be fueled by angst and fighting against something. And that is the low hanging fruit that you can grab. And we all can do it. We can fight against things for sure that are justifiable to fight against. There are exploitations that happen. And to be sure, there are actually out there bosses who do exploit and baristas who exploit and are lazy or manipulative. And I've said it before, there are some owners that shouldn't be owners and some baristas that shouldn't be baristas. However, I choose, and I think this is later stage in my life, you know, this year I'm going to be 46 years old. And as time marches on and I get to know my own patterns and I observe patterns in the world, I realize that there's no solution at the end of that rage fueled, victim seeking, blame placing, divisive mindset. But there is when you try to seek to fight for something, and in particular, fight for someone. Now, one of the first things that you have to do is make sure that this is going to work out for you and you know who you're going to serve and why and what. So, when you sign up to work for an organization, you have already probably, and I hope you have, done the homework to determine this is a place that I want to work. And you're just like the owner in that you're only going based on what you see and can know about something you haven't experienced in depth. The same thing, when an owner or a manager hires somebody, they do an interview. And in that interview, they are going to find out who you are and see if you're the right fit. Now, you do that with a business too. You need to be able to have studied what this place does and maybe even talk to some references about this cafe and how is it to work there, and make sure you're talking to people that you know are mature people and not just kind of petty vindictive people who, you get what I'm saying. So now you need to be able to assess, is this the right place to work? Because what's going to happen is, the understanding is you're going to work here, yes, for a paycheck, right? Because you need money. And I think you need to be working with the mindset that you're going to help this place be successful. You're going to help your coworkers be successful. You're going to help the boss be successful in the work so that you can bring the experience of whatever this cafe's style or flavor of experience is to more people. That's what you're signing up to do. And you get a paycheck. And you also get the benefits that are tangential benefits and eventually downstream benefits of life experience and professional experience and things like that. Same thing for owners. The understanding that you should have when opening a cafe is, yeah, you want to start a business and sure, you want to make profit and you do want it to be a rewarding experience, not only financially for you, there's nothing wrong with that. Anyone who says otherwise is probably not started a business. You need to be profitable, and there is a reward for your work in the profit of the business. But you also need to be of the mindset that you are going to serve other people who are in turn going to serve you and the business. They're going to work for you, but mostly you're all working for this and for one another. And that kind of an attitude where we're doing something for instead of against is where we can live for quite a long time. Because if we have a mindset that is already determined, hey, I am on your side, both of us, not just owners, reading the book by Danny Meyer, setting the table where hospitality is done for, not to, and we say, well, we're for you, right? Well, baristas and staff also need to do the same thing for the manager, for the owner, for each other. We're on your side. We're not going to nurse these factions. And no one's asking here for you to ignore a problem that comes up or what might be a perennial issue that's actually something toxic or dysfunctional. In fact, if something like that comes up, we will address it specifically because we care about each other, not because we're trying to seek ways to say, aha, told you so, look at you. But that's the tone I think I hear a lot of times. And you will find what you're looking for. That's why we don't like managers who only talk to us about things we're doing wrong. That's why we don't like to be treated like machines or that we're guilty before being proved innocent. We have to have a higher regard for each other going forward. And young baristas, please get this early in your career. Learn from other people and learn from older people in the industry and stop fueling yourself only by your peers that know just as few things as you do about this. Like that's good, but your peers, they'll help you, but you need to be able to seek information across generations that will help you in your pursuit of what I hope is an aim for maturing as a professional. This is not just one big party. You're part of an industry. And this was said at the Oscillations party at SCA. And I think it was Jen Apodaca who said this. I might be miscrediting this. I'm not sure. But Jen said that it's not a community, it's an industry. And I get what the point was. The point was, an industry is something we treat with a professionalism that allows for the physical act of developing a structure that cares for people. Community doesn't put money in bank accounts for farmers. Community is a good feeling, and it obviously is part of an industry, but it is not a replacement for industry. And it is not a replacement for the kind of growth that you need to have in order to run better businesses in the future. They say the young are the future. That's true. But who you are today and how you practice what you do as a barista is going to be who you are as a coffee shop owner and a boss. And if you practice seeking the negative, the divisive, always trying to prove the assumption that often is wrong, that bosses are evil, because you've got an overdeveloped sense of entitlement about there should be no friction or there should be zero dysfunction in a company of imperfect people working under stress, which sounds silly, then you're not going to do any better. And the same is true about owners who want to scale their business and they're constantly demonizing a generation of people who are just trying to work, but also find themselves and also find their working style and they believe in some level of what we're doing here, but they're also very impressionable. Whether they're young or not, first time in the coffee industry, as a barista, you're going to be sensitive to the inputs. And if what you're doing is automatically treating people with this assumptive approach, then what's going to happen is you're going to get more of the same. You're going to scale, you're going to reinforce that, and it's not this virtuous cycle, it's a vicious cycle. And so that's what we need. We need a virtuous cycle of positive assumption, charitable assumption, as is said by Danny in Setting the Table. That charitable assumption goes a long way to subvert our natural disposition to create enemies out of people who, because we're people, present inconveniences for us. And those inconveniences aren't things that we need to reinforce and then metastasize needlessly into something that's going to hold us back. So we talk about the future of coffee all the time. We treat it like it's this inert thing that we need to just invent a system on paper and then implement it. But it actually just comes down to relationships. And I believe in the coffee shop, and I believe in the coffee shop being such a powerful entity in the fight for a brighter future for the farmer, for our communities, and for ourselves as we do create for our community, with our community, in an industry that needs us to get over ourselves and not fall into these assumptions about evil bosses, lazy baristas, and the like. So I hope that this makes sense. Let's rewrite the narrative here. Let's work in our relationships as we work in our businesses and become better. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from keys to the shop.